Good morning, good afternoon. Oh, wait, where's the mic?
Mad, mad. You keeping that one in, boy.
Wow.
Let's go again. Woo.
Wow.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Practice Furnace with me, Robert.
With me, Pete.
Man like Mo. Banging that ramen, yeah?
Yo, we're
That
live streaming, you
tofu
know.
ramen. Yeah? I
There's
know it's live
there's
stream ramen.
legit there's legit like
Live and
your
uncut, baby.
face, your jaw, your mandibles going on this thing
Bro,
is present.
do you know what it is as well, yeah? I'm realizing that the broth is all on my lips. I'm looking like I got lip gloss on.
I mean, no one was thinking that, but cool.
I'm thinking that, but you know what? Man's comfortable, yeah?
Come on.
Ramen is life.
Nah,
This
it's not.
this this is the modern day manner, yeah? Let me get this light back on my face.
Heresy, heresy, heresy.
Yeah, you see it? I just got that light on my face and that modern day manner.
Full furnace.
From
Full furnace.
Wagamamas.
Full furnace.
Let's go.
Let's go. I think I'm in the hot seat this week.
I believe you might be.
Yeah.
I'm about
Yeah.
to bust out a theological question, boy.
And I'm about to say I don't know.
I've got an easier one before Mo goes in. My question to you was practically what have been your top 3 tips, top 2, top 1, however many you've got, that have helped you, 1, stay consistent, and 2, become more effective in your study of the Bible.
I think number one, having a wife that says, babe, we need to study the Bible more together.
Stress.
That's number one. Number two, this book actually. So I got this book called the Infographic Bible whilst I was away at camp, and yeah, it just has a whole bunch of pictorial things to do with the Bible. I'm not showing a good illustration, but it's good stuff, and yeah, it just led to some interesting like thought studies about the Bible, and like seeing what I like trying to grapple with thoughts and stuff and seeing how biblical my thoughts around it are.
Okay.
So like so like an example is there's one page that shows all the places like Jesus preached during his ministry. And like the top one place was split like 22% between in people's homes and in the synagogue slash temple. And so so I was just having a conversation with Andrew about with those two being the top two and being equal, is that something that Christians should strive to do in our lives when it comes to preaching the word and like giving the word? And yeah, and I just found it interesting that it was a split between home and then the temple being the number one places that he did it. Yeah, and just stuff like that,
That's cool.
and just,
That's cool.
and then just having random thoughts about random stuff. You know me, I think the craziest things. Like this week, I think I was thinking like, could Jesus win like an MMA match without training? And if he could, then is he really like fully human if he can do things that humans couldn't do without training? It's like having a cheat code. It's like having the Game Shark.
I mean,
You know
if
what I
I'm
mean?
to throw in just a quick answer, I don't think you could win a MMA bout without training, because he was perfected in his suffering. So somehow the perfect God still required in his human form, because he submitted to being human and because he was fully human, still required growing up, still required perfection in that suffering of, the growing pains, as it were. And so I think, as with all things, I think he would have he would have clearly had an aptitude for it. You know, when he was in the temple, it says he was asking questions and they marveled at his insight. Not necessarily that they didn't marvel at, oh, he came through just teaching us stuff. It seems to allude, or it seems to infer, or you can infer from it that he was, as a young, I think it was 12 years old at the time, he was a 12-year-old with godly insight, if that makes sense. There was that limitation of his infanthood there. And so I think that would still apply. He, being God, was all of a sudden no longer omniscient. There were things he said he didn't know. He was no longer omnipresent. He had to be in one location at any given point in time, while during his ministry at the very least. He was no longer omnipotent, because he submitted himself unto, all, including death. And so I think he did limit himself in a way that a human being would be limited. And I think regardless of whether or not you have the aptitude, without training in a martial art, you aren't going to get too far against, the elite. So I think he'd get beaten.
I don't think
chokehold.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would.
Chokehold.
I think.
So,
well,
I was gonna say.
I don't think I agree with him not being omniscient, because there wasn't anything that he didn't know the answer to.
Well, when would he come back again?
He knew. He just wasn't saying.
No, he said he didn't know. Only the Father.
Okay, so what I mean by him still being omniscient, he knew who was going to be betrayed. He knew who was going to be by.
Omniscient means knowing all things. If there's one thing you don't know, you're no longer omniscient.
Okay, we're talking technicalities now.
No, we're not talking technicalities. We're talking the definition of the word.
He was still psychic, basically.
Relax.
No. I mean, like,
he knew their hearts.
Exactly.
He knew what things were saying in his mind. But then he also said he wouldn't say anything that God didn't, so God had revealed to him. In the same way, there are prophets that know, word of knowledge. That doesn't mean they are psychic. That doesn't mean they, know all things.
Yeah, no, but they don't know like Jesus knows, though.
Don't be treating Jesus like any manga protagonist,
I'm just saying that he knew things that normal humans wouldn't know, even with the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Spirit was in him, so he still had that flowing connection at all times, making him still the God man.
He still limited himself to being fully human.
But you could take those limits off at any time he wanted to.
He didn't.
No, but he could have.
If he was in an MMA fight.
It would have defeated the purpose. It would, if he removed his limitation. If at any point he stopped being fully man, it would have defeated the purpose.
Exactly.
But he could have.
He could have.
I was going to say as well. That's what I'm saying.
I was going to say as well, as a carpenter, he apprenticed under his dad.
Yeah.
We can assume that.
Yeah.
And so
that's the only reason we assume he was a carpenter.
Yeah. And so in the fact that he apprenticed under his dad means that in as much as he was fully God, he wasn't just there carving out benches and stuff.
Or maybe he was holding back so that he could be humble.
He still learned the ropes, kept it going.
He knew.
Man didn't want to usurp his dad.
Because he knew. Like, if he limited himself, that means that he could unlimit himself. Yes or no?
Yeah, no, he could.
Exactly. Humans can't unlimit themselves.
So I think in his fully divine nature, he limited himself then and submitted himself to the authority of God the Father and God the Holy Spirit. Well, God the Father by the empowerment of God the Holy Spirit. And so in his humbled state, he then couldn't throw off humanity. Because in his divine state, he humbled himself and submitted himself. And in that place of submission, God would then have to do that work. And so he had fully trusted himself in the rest of the Godhead.
But didn't he throw off his humanity during the Transfiguration?
That's a good, but again, that wasn't something that he did in and of himself. if that makes sense. He had entered
But
into
being
this
part of the
space where
Trinity, he did, because he is part of the process of that happening. I'm being half silly, but half serious. At the
I
same
know,
time.
I know. That's why I'm actually considering it. Yeah.
yeah, I see Peter proper considering it. Because I see it as he was still hypostatic union, he was still fully human. And I could be wrong. I mean, it's a divine mystery how it works.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
no,
was
but
glorified in that moment.
yeah. Yeah, but it's also the base, part of the basis of Christianity that he was fully
Well,
fully
it's
when he
actually
came down.
it actually ends up being a much more important point in him sort of, as it were, qualifying as our kingsman redeemer, that he be fully human.
Yeah.
That's why it suffices. Otherwise, it wouldn't. So yeah. Anyway,
All right.
yeah, I'm happy with that's interesting, and that infographic Bible, I'm planning on buying at my next paycheck. But yeah,
Yeah, go
Bless
for it.
me, bro. Bless me. Bless me.
that'll be the paycheck in the future.
So October, yeah.
Future, I said future.
So my question for you, riffing off of Bible study this Tuesday, if someone was to ask you, why do you place so much faith in the Bible, in knowing God? So whether a new believer, now let's say a new believer who's come to faith and he's questioning, because obviously he's heard the Bible contains so much contradictions, blah blah blah. There's been agendas behind the Bibles and stuff, and the person's like, how do you know that you can trust this Bible? Not necessarily this translation or that translation, but the Bible in general. How would you respond to that?
It might sound like a joke to begin with, but I think the first question I would ask is, do you want to know about the God of the Bible? You know, if you want to know about the God of the Bible, you need to know the Bible from which that tells you about this God. You know, and as Christians, we believe that this is God's inspired word, and so we need to take it as this is what God has decided to reveal about himself to us. You know, from there we could talk about the contradictions, but are there really contradictions? And then we just go through them. Like if something isn't making sense, then we can chop out one by one and go through it. And then I think I do it that way rather than, because it's hard for me to make you believe something that you may not want to believe. If that makes sense. So no, it's hard for me to make you believe my reason for why I believe that this Bible is God's word.
Okay.
So if you think there are contradictions, if you think that it is the white man's Bible, you know, we can go and look at the Ethiopian. We can go and look at, you know, it being based in the Middle East, not in England. You know.
Facts. And what if they show you the PDF of the slave Bible?
Of the what Bible?
The slave Bible.
Yeah, that's called the slave Bible. Yeah. That's not the Holy Bible. You know, it be the slave Bible. You can tell the agenda behind why this Bible was.
That's a good counteraction. That's a good counteraction. Okay.
Yeah. And they'll say, "Oh, this is the Bible that the white man gave to the black people, so that they wouldn't try and break free." Okay, so you know why the white people created this version of the Bible and the agenda behind it. Same way with the, what was that thing called? What's the LGBT Bible called?
Oh, is it Sparkle Bible or something?
Queen Mary, Queen James.
You know the agenda behind that, you know, and even if you look and there are different versions of the Bible. So there was the Bible that highlighted all the instances of like justice being mentioned in the Bible or something like that, you can tell that they have an emphasis on wanting to portray justice within the Bible. You know, but if it's just the Holy Bible, then I just believe that as God's word. Some translations are better than others. The Message I'll throw out. NIV, I'm like,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Nat just asked a question. They have a Bible? Yeah. It's Queen James. It's Queen James.
Queen
Bible,
James, slay Queen.
It's Queen James, and they've also got a creed, the Sparkle Creed.
Sparkle Creed, yes.
The Sparkle Creed.
People are going to be reading the Bible into hell.
Bro. Doctrine leading. So I take it as your response would be more lenient towards faith than an argument.
Say, like, and let's troubleshoot together.
Okay. Peter.
No, it's fair. It's fair. I think I maybe I misunderstood the question, but I think it was more what gives you confidence that this is the word of God.
Yeah, and I think for him, his answer is, I have faith in this.
Yeah.
Why?
As opposed to it's faith.
Okay. So like, I think for me, it's easy to just start at that point of believing this is God's word. So okay, if I believe this is God's word, what am I doing with it?
Okay.
You know, and take it from there. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but I think just the way my works, I'm like, okay, instead of trying to prove that this thing is real, let me believe it's true and then go from there and allow it to authenticate itself through me, and I'll see the results of God working through me in my life and authenticate it that way.
Yeah. So it's almost like an approach of like taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to rationalize it, actually like taste of the word, taste of what he's saying, taste of who he is as he's communicated it.
Yeah. Because the thing with like rationalizing is you can rationalize anything any way you want it.
Yeah.
Facts.
Sure.
Facts.
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that.
Should we get into today's topic?
Yes, sir.
Oh, where's it gone? The topic is gone. It's gone. There was a celebrity I wanted to talk about. I can't remember which one it was.
In the news recently?
You in the news recently. It wasn't Lizzo. I'm tired of that one.
Nat just says, because the word is foolishness to those who are perishing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I just had it. Who else was in the news recently? It wasn't Neo. Neo was funny in the news.
Oh, Neo, yeah.
Was he in the news?
Neo was in the news.
So Neo made some comments about trans and kids and stuff.
He didn't even say anything wild. He didn't say anything wild.
He didn't.
Bro, I am still gassed over the Skepta track that was dropped in the group.
The transvestites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dropped in which group?
The Good Men.
Did I see this?
Yeah. I don't think you did actually, because you didn't comment.
I remember like listening to that track when it first came out on the album.
Bro, I went onto Spotify and I listened to the thing. I was like, yo.
Well, did he go in on them?
Bro, it's like, you see Transformers, the theme song, Transformers. He remixed it to transvestites, man them in disguise.
What? I missed this completely.
And then he had a line that goes, you thought that was a girl because it had a handbag. You didn't know it was a next man's granddad.
Yo. This is mad. I completely missed that.
I was like, raw. And the funniest thing is, Skepta now wears female clothing as well. there was a video back in the day where he was actually like, "No, this is female clothing," and the woman was like, "Why are you wearing it?" Because he's like, "Because it's comfortable."
Fair enough.
Oh, guys, help me remember what I want to talk about. It's gone.
Stress.
It wasn't Neo. It wasn't. It wasn't Jamie Foxx.
Or was it Lizzo?
Oh, Tory Lanez. That's what I wanted to talk about.
The guy that shot the girl.
Meg Thee Stallion.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's been more than alleged now. So yeah,
apparently man's been in prison doing that gospel.
So Tory Lanez has been imprisoned for 10 years for the shooting of Meg Thee Stallion. He shot her in the foot, and it wasn't even her that pressed charges. It was the people against Tory Lanez, and I think he got 3 years for carrying a weapon, 3 years for some discharge, and 3 years for right. And so he's going to be spending 10 years in prison. So that happened, and then I saw an article, and the article, and his name was "Why Tory Lanez's Conviction is a Victory for Black Women Everywhere."
Black women.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because a black woman got shot.
Yeah.
And even if a celebrity stays, he still went to prison. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's just me, but like whenever I see something framed that way, it makes me roll my eyes a bit, you know. like how have you dissected something down to a group like that? And then I just caught myself thinking, am I here when it comes to black women? Like, I'm married to a black woman. I came from a black woman. Am I a hater when it comes to black women? Or is there really something in black women not being as protected as they feel like they're not? So I want to throw out to you guys.
Did you read the article?
No.
Alright.
I can see if I can find it.
Well, I guess Mo's presumption probably sounds like it'll be right. Like, a black woman was shot, and despite the celebrity status of the culprit, he's still paying for his crimes.
He's still held accountable.
Yeah.
Because I have heard loads more reports of women from ethnic minority groups after sexual assault and after rape and stuff, them not being taken seriously, it just being fobbed off. Now it may be across the board, women in general, but in my interactions with women, there's been a lot more skepticism around black women and women in ethnic groups who have reported stuff and have just kind of just been brushed off. And it's less, I think it's typically less likely that women from ethnic minorities would report assault and report different things like that. And when they do report it, there's a less likelihood of them being believed. And so it's just like, not all of them are reporting it. And out of the small percentage who are reporting it, not all of them are being believed. And out of those who are being believed, there's an even smaller percentage of those who are actually gaining convictions and stuff. And so like it just kind of trails off, which leaves a sour note. And with black women being heavily sexualized and black men being heavily sexualized, there's always this almost like skepticism and stuff. But that's historically. I don't know if it's still the same case now, but that is the historical premise.
There was that foundation, you know, the 5 Times Foundation that found a report about black women being 5 times more likely to die during childbirth than their white counterparts, and that's like modern day. Oh, look, I'm off. Modern day stuff.
Yeah. Nat mentioned something as well. It's a bad mix of wokeness and new age feminism.
Oh,
I do believe that the feminism movement has been hijacked to a degree, and a lot of things have kind of been tacked onto it. So there's an analogy where one guy said that at every march there will be someone who is marching for something just adjacent to what the main march is about. So the main march may be like Black Lives Matter, and then the person may be, yeah, and legalize weed. Like there's something just adjacent that is like, yeah, like if you want to march for that, that's cool. You man do your thing, but don't do it with our thing. Like you've mixed it. And there's almost like this amalgamation of different things. Because even the feminism movement, there was a split between ethnic minorities and white people because they were like, what white people are screaming about still oppresses ethnic women. Like it's not all encompassing with what ethnic minorities are facing, and so there's almost this, yeah, this
have you heard?
spill.
Have you heard the theory that the reason feminism was invented was to detract from the black the black equality movement that was happening at the time?
That's mad. I haven't heard of it, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Even
So feminism was a result all along.
this was a ruse. There's a apparently back in the day, women weren't like women smoking wasn't a thing. It was only men who smoked. And during a march, one guy who was in charge of marketing for cigarettes had actually paid a couple of women and photographers that when the march got to a certain place, the women would like stand up, lift up their skirts, and then take a cigarette and like light it and smoke it as this banner of freedom. And the photographers would take a picture of them alongside the march as this thing, and then almost be used as this propaganda for smoking. And the headlines read, "These women are big torches of freedom." Now we've got a whole generation of women who are essentially killing themselves with cigarettes because of this propaganda that kind of spread. So
Yeah,
women
but the
now store it
importance
as
is to have the freedom, to have the freedom to kill yourself.
kill yourself. Yes, yes.
Same
To
thing with
determine how
abortion.
you die. Yes.
Same thing with abortion. It should be
Bro,
my right to kill this child.
when I heard the transgender dude, or transgender woman who was a dude, who's now a woman, saying she wants to be the first transgender woman to have a successful womb transplant and then have an abortion, I was like, bro, whoa, what the hell is this? So your claim to fame is getting a wound from somebody else just to kill a life.
Only human beings. This speaks to our depravity. But only human beings can go to that extent of technological advancement, of education, improvement, of whatever, to go to such great lengths just to kill ourselves.
Bro,
It's kind of ridiculous.
just to make a
Kind of
point.
ridiculous.
Just to make, and it isn't even a good point. It's not even a good point.
Yeah, but like going back to the black women, as men married to black women and as fathers to black daughters, do you feel like they aren't protected, or do you, yeah, in your experience, do you feel like your wives and daughters aren't as safe as their white and male counterparts?
I would say yes. I would say they, unfortunately, have to be a lot more aware of themselves and their surroundings when they're moving about. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, unfortunately, they're having to be a lot more self-aware and self-conscious in different spaces, blah blah blah. Yeah, I would say so. So there's always this notion of me needing to ensure that my children specifically can like hold their own. So thinking about just practical stuff like Leia needs to get into martial arts, not just from a recreational point of view. And oh, it'll be fun. Nah, like I need you to be able to hold your own. So yeah.
Would you say that concern is more for you being a man, concerned for women, for a young girl, or is there an element of their blackness that is significant there?
I think there is an element of their blackness, of their skin being significant. I can't help but when I read stories like there was a girl in America who was in the army, was apparently assaulted by her fellow soldiers, people in her whatever. She went to report it, and it got dismissed. And then like a week later, she just went missing and got found dead. And like stories like that aren't like rare.
But what element did the skin
Because
play there?
all of her fellow soldiers were all white, and I think she was either the only or one of the few within her team or whatever. Charges were being dismissed, like she was saying, I'm not. It's just like it is a good point, but there is this isn't an isolated incident, and I do also feel like there is a lot more coverage when it isn't a person of color.
Is there a way to differentiate when the action is being done towards someone because they are a black woman versus being
just because they're a woman,
being a woman in general? Yeah,
and that would be a good if there is. I don't know if nothing comes to mind as a clear distinction between okay, this is purely like racially motivated. I'm thinking about like the random stops and stuff. American like driving, but even in America, over here as well. Even to the point of I got stopped and searched outside of my door. Like, bro, I literally I closed my door, turned around, and there were police officers standing there waiting for me. Like, it's mad.
So let me preface. Oh, sorry. Finish.
No, go for it.
So I was going to say, let me preface with this. I do think there are elements that that skin has to do with it. The color of skin has to do with some of these things. I'll come to that later. But in terms of like the prejudices, some of these prejudices that come against black folk, I think we have to be honest with some of the statistics, right? So it was interesting. I mean, I intentionally like mess up my feed sometimes with like right-wing stuff or left-wing stuff, and so make it such that the algorithm doesn't know am I a right-wing conservative or a liberal, you know. But just to see what other sides are saying, and like you said, like Robert, you made the point earlier, you can rationalize anything, right? There are statistics to prove any point, but there's some statistics that you have to look at, and if the numbers are true, then they should speak volumes. Like in South London, right? What's the population of black folk to white folk in sort of some of these areas in South London? I mean, again, I won't know if the statistics are true, but I will know what I see on the bus, for instance, right? Walking past, it's Mandem, lots more than it's, you know, it's the geezers, right? And so if in such areas, there, by virtue of being more, more crime is coming from some of these areas. I'm not talking about the reasons why. We know about some of the intentional things done to keep certain societies in certain places, right? We know that some of these things go like denying people opportunities based off of their name, denying communities, loans, all of those things. Yes, there are people in higher places doing evil things. But if statistically there are more crime coming from a particular community, then when the police start going in and are targeting that community, and as much as it's unfair, it's like, well, if there are issues with my electrics in the house, I'm going to target the things that, I'm going to target the wires and the plugs and stuff like that. I'm not going to look at the flooring, right? Because that's not where the problem comes from.
Yeah.
Right. So even saying in America, the stop and thing, in America, in certain societies, or not even certain societies, they were looking at statistics of by percentile, blacks being less than the being the minority, but being responsible for a majority of the crime. Now that said, again, there are reasons why some of these things are, intentional things that were done to keep certain communities. You abolish slave trade, you recompense the slave owners, and then the slavers, you keep them in projects and you keep them there, all of these things. So there are reasons why, but then I think we can't just look at the optics of it, right? To make some of these suggestions. I've been searched before in front of my house, right? Literally in front of my house, coming from a church event, right? Which I think should count for something. But at the same time, yeah, there's also been lots of weed. Not here, by the way. This was back when I lived in South London as well.
Don't do that. Don't do
You
that.
never lived in London, bro.
Don't do that.
You never lived in London, bro.
I lived just outside of Croydon.
Just outside of London.
But there was weed, and there's like stabbings and all of these things, and so it's like statistically, yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I do not believe for a second that black people smoke more weed than white people do. That is not true.
I mean, I can only go by what I've seen.
No.
I don't see a lot of.
You see the stereotypes.
You see weed, but then you go to all these raves where these guys are sniffing.
Of course, yeah.
Horse tranquilizer.
Of course.
Something that is used to put down a horse, they'll be injecting.
I'm not going to these waves though. But what
I'm saying is like stuff like weed is demonized because it's associated with the black community, but then stuff like the cocaine and the quote unquote like party drugs, like the MDMAs, the heroin, those ones which are seen more as like white drugs, they don't get as bad a rep as stuff like weed.
Are they seen more as white drugs, or are the people that indulge in that particular sin? Well, no, the people that indulge in that end up being people that, I don't know, have access to more money to get it. Whereas
and to buy good lawyers.
Even laughing gas, even those like laughing gas balloons, that's seen as like
but you know far too much about this. Like, what's going on?
I've lived life.
The point I was going to say though.
Quickly, I was going to say.
Yeah.
There was one time we went on a retreat to the countryside, and the air was different. The air just felt clean. And obviously, motorway coming back to ends. We get to Croydon. I wind down the window. I was like, weed. Yeah, we're back on ends.
No, facts though. Facts. We get that going in and coming out. Anyway, but the point I was going to say was, on the one hand, like, and again, I can speak to sort of what I see in the African culture, and this is not even in London, this is back home, right? We tend to cover a lot of these things up, and it's not even racism. It's just, it's misogyny. It's, some of these really, really backwards ways of thinking. So, it's also status and pride, and so we at home, again, speaking from what I see, are much more likely to cover certain things, to sweep certain things under the carpet when there's certain things going on.
To interject, yes, but it's almost like the argument of so even with that, it doesn't remove or deny the heinous nature of what goes on the other side. So I think you made there was a similar argument with slavery where it was like, oh, but there were black slave catchers, and it's almost um like in terms of like trying to dilute or derail the conversation as to the black slave catchers were essentially employed by the white slave owners, and they were doing trades and stuff. Now they didn't know the level of slavery that these people were suffering when they came over the seas. They may have just thought about the servitude that they endured within the tribe. So one tribe will capture another tribe and put them to work or whatever. And it kind of just saw that, but they didn't realize what was actually going on in the colonies and in America and even in the UK. And so these people were perpetuating evils, yes, arguably in ignorance as to the full scale of what they're participating in. And so we even, yes, in more traditional African cultures, bro, like child brides, sexual assaults and stuff happening within families, blah blah blah, and then almost being beaten if you try to share it and stuff like that. And so there are things that happen within the tribe and within the cultures, but also in terms of when we look within this context, it's operating within this democracy and stuff within the UK is operating slightly differently to the way it's operating there, where there's understandably a wider justice system, specifically targeted towards that, and that is still failing.
So here's the point I was trying to make. So on the one hand, I don't think it dilutes or derails the conversation, especially going back to the slavery thing. I think it provides greater context. So you were talking about the slave catchers in Africa and making a presumption they don't know the consequences of what, they're catching slaves and stuff was going to do. I'd push back on that because, like, if you go to Elmina Castle and some of the castles where they sent them from, like, it wasn't hidden. The dungeons that they pack these guys into, there's no way you can think they are going to anything better than what they have there. That's one side. The other side is on the other end of things. For instance, we talk about the slave owners and stuff. We know about the Washingtons and the Jeffersons owning slaves, right? But there's nowhere near as much coverage of the black slave owners, of which there were many, of which there were there were quite wealthy black slave owners. And I think it's not to dilute the conversation, but it's to provide greater context such that we don't have a skewed view, which just makes us angry. And I say that because I think that's part of the agenda. Like, I don't say Black History Month is part of that agenda, but every month a year, we have to remind you guys that you were once slaves. I think it's just to keep people angry, to keep them in a certain mindset, to keep them feeling like there's still a chain around their neck, right? Yeah. And I think it provides greater context to see, wait, hold on, there's a lot more evil here than just this one person you want me to focus on. That was still evil. The fact that UK, as small as we are, was doing all of the things that they were doing, right? Part of all of these things is still evil. But there was also a lot more, and I think getting the wider context of, oh, actually, no, we are all just depraved as humans. I don't necessarily need to be angry at the white man. I need to recognize that we are all depraved. The white man somehow managed to make their depravity more far spread, but we all are. And then
they shipped it out.
I'm not locked into this thing of I'm black and I'm oppressed. Now, the point I was making with Africa was bringing them here. So in Africa, we sweep those things under the carpet. We do all of the things. Bringing them here, not to say our parents, but Africans here, you take them out of Africa, but you don't take Africa out of them. That same idea, that same mentality remains here. So you have families here that don't want the stigma of having an assault, so that their child comes back and then they still sweep it under the carpet. And that then skews the way that the justice system reports on these things, and the way that, and when the statistics aren't accurate on all of these things. Like we say, oh yeah, these guys are abused or these guys are not abused as much. It creates certain presumptions about people. Same thing with childbirth. And so the 5 times thing, it's frowned upon more, I guess. Well, I'm saying this anecdotally, but it's frowned upon more amongst black people to use epidurals and stuff because you're supposed to be strong, and black women are considered to be strong, right? But that stems from, again, our mentality in general, like our being this thing, and that then becomes I think it skews perceptions towards black people so that we then perpetuate the same things. When Nell was pregnant, some lady was like, oh no, she was having the contractions. We're in the hospital. Stuff was going on that meant, the dilation wasn't going as well as it should have. One lady said, no, you shouldn't be here taking all these painkillers. You should go home and cook. It's like, and obviously it's a black lady saying that to my black wife. It's like, yeah, no, you should stand on your feet and this, or you will. These people take the drugs, we don't. And it's like, that's from a black person to another black person. Right. It's not necessarily racism. It's our culture, it's our culture refusing to embrace modern medicine as much. Like, we see it all around. Like, it's I think, and sometimes again we want to, not we want to, but the conversation gets directed towards, this is the white man still oppressing the black woman, but actually there are elements of our own culture, I think, that contribute to some of these things that we don't address.
I think in these kind of conversations, it's a thing of two things can be true at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean about wider context. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the parts that about the black culture, that's stuff that we can deal with within our culture. Mm-hmm. But then the stuff that's done to us, that one's a bit more difficult to do something about if people aren't willing to have the conversation and say, actually, you know what, this is what the reality of the situation is.
Yeah. And those are two things that need to be worked on simultaneously. I think. Yeah.
I was gonna say as well, there's I think you mentioned something quite key, Peter, in that there is an agenda, there is this almost like this revenge agenda where I have been wronged, and so the only way to right that wrong is almost an eye for an eye. We may have the modern day equivalent of whatever we may think that is, but you need to recognize it and you need to restore it. There is some wisdom in that or whatever. But I find it very interesting. I think that is more of a Western approach to justice. Now we do see an eye for an eye in the Bible, but I think it may even have been you, Peter. Correct me if I've attributed this to you wrongly. But someone mentioned that there was almost a system of a system of revenge, where it's like, if this person wrongs me, I'm going to kill them, their mum, I'm going to do whatever. And then God was like, no, like an eye for an eye. So it's almost reducing the punishment as opposed to expanding it to the fullness.
It wasn't me, but yeah, no, that sounds right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's almost like, no, we're not going to perpetuate this cycle of hatred, but we're going to end with this. So it's almost reducing the bloodlust to a measurable quantity.
But then with that kind of thing, it never ends. So let's say you took my eye, so then I take your eye. Now you've taken my eye, I'm gonna take a knife from someone else on your side. And then it's just that domino effect. It's never just, okay, yeah, 1 for 1, we're good. Because now that you burnt me, I need to go and burn someone else, and that's when someone else is getting burnt.
And that's the revenge sort of mentality. as opposed to justice mentality. And the reason I brought that up is almost in the Old Testament when I think it was Judah got ransacked and Naaman took the girl and had like a slave girl, and he was leprous, and the slave girl was like, yo, if you go to Jerusalem, someone can heal you. Broski, if you killed my family and you're leprous and I know where you can get healed, why am I telling you? Why am I telling you? But there wasn't this sense of revenge. There wasn't this sense of I'm gonna let this person die and an agonizing death because of whatever. It's like, no, my God can heal you. There are prophets. There's someone in Israel who can heal you. And even God is like, if you go somewhere and you kill all the men and you keep the virgin women for yourselves, if there's one in them who you like and you want to take them as your wife, do your thing. Bro, you've just slaughtered my whole, and you're gonna take me for your wife. Are you mad? Like, the mentality seems different.
Oh, the mentality was definitely different. Yeah.
The mentality seems different. And even when we look at forced servitude, the tribal sense of forced servitude. Now, I don't know, them man could be getting beaten, like treating like trash. Again, within the Bible, it could have been the same thing. But there's almost this sense of recognizing your lot, but not holding this person in malice, bizarrely. And it seems totally counter to this sense of aggression and revenge that is populating the Western mindset currently, where it's like, yo, like if you mention someone's pronouns wrong, it's long for you.
Yeah.
It's long for you. And there's just this aggression that is coming in your direction. But again, with all the faults that people may find biblically within this war and conquest sequence, there was something about it that there wasn't this sense of, bro, like if they were going to go fight, they'll give you notice. Yo, draw up battle lines. Like, let's do this thing. But man, them are giving notice for a war. Are you mad? What? Right now, yeah, them man are gonna send one spy to spike your drink and keep it moving. And so it just seems like the revenge, this agenda, this anger-ridden agenda, has seeped into the culture.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with there not being a revenge culture in biblical times. I think maybe it just looks different from
Probably,
what
yeah.
it does. Yeah, because the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. You know,
That's true.
And I feel like, yeah, in different times people are doing different kind of madnesses. Right now we're fighting about pronouns. Back then they were doing child sacrifice. You know, So yeah, so
to add to that, I agree with you that it looked slightly differently. That there was a part of David's cohort when David was fighting against Saul's side, so Judah was fighting against Israel. There was a war where one guy from David's side, one guy from Israel's side killed one guy from David's side's brother. And then when things were being squashed, the guy from Israel came over to see David. And then the guy whose brother got killed was like, yo, my man came and you let him go, didn't you know, blah, blah, blah. David was like, nah, like that was during war. This is peaceful times. Like it is what it is. The guy whose brother died went to go kill the guy who killed his brother and then ran away. David's response to that was very interesting. He fasted and lamented for the dead guy. And so even then, there's almost this recognition of this is war. And he was like, David lamented saying, this person has spilled innocent blood because of something that was done during war. And so even with that revenge mentality, it would like one person acted on revenge, but then David, who was like one of the only good kings, showed almost like a righteous way of dealing with that, if that makes sense. So I agree with you in that, yes, revenge is still kind of seen within the Bible, but it's almost like just because it was doesn't necessarily mean that that was right. And I think
Yeah.
in David's response, we see the right way in responding to revenge, or a
And I
glimpse
think,
into the right way.
and I think even in like today's culture, like even within all like the gang wars and stuff, there's still rules of engagement. You know, like they may be unwritten. Like there's certain places, certain times that you aren't supposed to go. And so when
Facts.
someone breaks that rules,
Facts.
everyone's like, "Whoa!" Like you know,
You got caught slipping.
yeah, or like that's not how we do things. So even if it may seem a bit more archaic, like even today, even in the stupid postcode wars, you know, there's law, there's unwritten rules, and I think that throughout history there'll always be the written rules and the unwritten rules. Sometimes they might look the same, sometimes they might look different, but I think if you scratch beneath the surface, you'll find that we're not so different, even thousands of years removed. But circling back before we finish, is there anything that you feel that you as a person can do to protect Black women more? Or do you feel like black women need protecting by the Black men within the society?
Yeah, I think like Mo said, 'cause I didn't say anything to that, but I think
Yeah.
it's teaching them to protect themselves, like making not making independent, strong Black women. No,
Yes, queen, slang.
Adding to the
No.
rhetoric.
but making like just not, I guess, not imposing limitations on them that they don't need to have, like that. You know, they don't need to all of a sudden be so concerned with all of these things. It's like, no, if I teach you to have principles, and I teach you to be excellent in what you do, and I teach you to be able to handle yourself at the very least, you know, be able to break away, run, scream, not put yourself in certain situations, you know. And I'm not saying you wore a miniskirt, it's on you. No, I'm saying I don't walk down a dark alley, you know, in South London, not because I'm not wearing a mini skirt, but because there's something like common sense, you know. So
If
stuff
you ever
like
see
that,
Peter wearing a mini skirt, you better run.
you know. I think it's that, you know, so bringing up confident, capable, competent young women is my thing, and doing the same for men as well. I still think you need to be able to submit. I still would want for God's plan for us, you know, marriage and procreation, all of that. I still want that. So you still need to be able to be a wife, and I don't think it's making you a man that will do that. But then I think making strong, capable, confident women and making strong, capable, confident men, I think is what we can do, or at least what I intend to do.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think strengthen the one by strengthening the community, or strengthen the community by strengthening
the one. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's very much just like, okay, showing my daughters, or encouraging them to know that their voice matters, that they can speak up about things, that just because something happens to them doesn't necessarily mean they need to just shut up and take it. They should like voice things and disagree and blah blah blah, and to not just kind of like tuck their tails between their legs if no one listens to it, but to almost try to figure out the best ways to communicate what they need to communicate, whilst also strengthening them to be able to hold their own, and also holding my sons to the same standard of, like, we need to look out for our community. Like, these people are part of our communities and stuff. And so if you see something happening, if it's a case of if I try to step into it, I may put myself into immediate harm or whatever. Yo, like call the police, like do something. Don't just run away. Don't just leave that situation. Try to improve that situation even as you're leaving it. Do something about it. And so it will very much be a case of teaching them how to know their value, know their worth, and to defend that for themselves. And then as an extension, how do we do that for others? Because not everybody else is going to have these infrastructures and things in place. So how do we defend and protect ourselves and our value, and how do we help other people do that? And leading by example, hopefully, so that they can kind of see me stepping into someone's side when they need help and stuff. So yeah,
It's good.
yeah.
I think for me, just in like the day to day, just like pushing back in certain conversations where a black woman is said to have been aggressive or seemed angry in what she was saying. Because usually she's just talking, but because of her skin color, you're taking offense to it. These times, there's one white woman talking the wickedest, and you're like, oh, that's just Sharon.
Sally. That's just Sally.
Yeah, and
She's had a bit of a lager, so yeah, she's a bit lippy.
Yeah, and I think just like challenging a little bit, saying like, are you sure what's she really shouting, or like was she really being aggressive, or was she just just talking, because there's this stigma of like the angry black woman, and so I've definitely seen black women shrinking themselves and trying to be quiet so that they don't scare their white counterparts,
Which is such a shame.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line there, though. There's a fine line there. Like in the same way as we see like the Karens and stuff, and sometimes it's like it's a presentation thing, but then sometimes it's also you're being like unnecessarily loud. You're being unnecessarily passionate about
but the thing is, the thing is, especially for a white woman doing the exact same thing, she won't be called aggressive or anything. She'll just be like, no, she's just trying to make her point.
Or she'd be called a Karen.
That's internet.
There's making the point, and there's just being mad.
Because we've also seen, and I'm sure you guys know, we've also seen like you can have the loud, and it's not just black women. You can have the loud person that's overly passionate and overly like aggressive about something like that. That exists as well.
Yeah, but like I don't think overly passionate automatically makes you a Karen. Like you can just be passionate.
No. But there's circumstances in which being over passionate is being a Karen. Yeah. Someone's parked in a disabled spot, but they are disabled. They're just not you, and you're upset about it. That's being a Karen. That's being thingy.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say as well. This is very interesting. This is like a female orientated conversation had by an all male group.
Do we need some
I think it's important sometimes. I think it's important. No, it's not everyday representation. Not every day.
What I was gonna say, I wasn't even gonna go down representation. What I was gonna say was
triggered.
He's triggered, boy. Took him back a couple years. That PTSD. I was gonna say, female listeners, if there is something that we have missed, or something that something that in terms of how we could improve or how we can actually go about that we have missed or could be added on, or slight nuance that we haven't included, like please feel free to drop it into the comments, stuff like that. Because it isn't from a perspective of we know best, but it's like it's a conversation.
And even as we're only speaking from our perspective, but being guys, there will be things that we aren't aware of and that we can miss easily. So it's a good shout.
So just drop it in the comments. Just drop it in the team.
Cool. All right, let's round up. Hookups.
I can go first. Oh no, go.
Yeah.
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 So I want to hook up a YouTube channel. I recently, and by recently, I found out yesterday, and I say that because once I go through and if it's rubbish, I don't wanna. I'll come back and take it back. But I've only seen one thing from this guy, but it was really good. It's a YouTube channel called Wise Disciple.
Okay.
Wise Disciple, and he very much has like just it's the usual reactions to like Hillsong and to debates and to all of these things, but he's got some very, very good insights. The video I most recently watched was he did like a hypothetical: aliens are here, what do we do now? Talking about if aliens exist, do they disprove God, and what is the likelihood that they do exist, and if they don't exist, what could we be like looking at when we talk about some of these alien encounters and all of these things. And I thought it was a very, very, very balanced and well presented argument. So yeah, check him out. Wise Disciple on YouTube.
I did see someone theorize that aliens are demons and that we need to be praying against them.
I think if anything, that's more likely, and he makes this point, it's more likely that these things would be demonic than that they'd actually be extraterrestrial. But he then goes on to say, even if they are, does that disprove God? And long and short, he says they don't, and I think so as well, because there are other beings, like there are the cherubim and stuff, and yes, they're in the spiritual realm, but there seems to be so it's just but. Yeah.
My thing.
Said a lot, say nothing.
You said a lot of years.
Yeah.
My thing is an anime. So this anime has been out for a minute, and I've seen it floating about. But I finished watching all of my other animes, and I was just like, oh, this one is fairly new. Let me see what this one's about. Hell's Paradise.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Hell's Paradise. I'm like 5 episodes deep. There's only one season out thus far, and it's 13 episodes. I think the second season is gonna drop soon. Yeah. But Hell's Paradise on Crunchyroll.
I don't know if the manga is done, but the manga is. I've heard good things about it.
Do you know what? I love when I hear the manga is done, because there's an end in sight. There's an end in sight. Yeah. It's not One Piece. There's an end in sight. But yeah, the premise is sick without ruining the storyline. There's one person who is an assassin devoid of emotion, and there's another person who's an assassin gripped by their emotion. And it's almost like this journey that they're journeying together, and both of them are having to learn how to almost come to the middle. So one person is coming from this void, emotionless place of this assassin, but this person is coming from like fully gripped by her emotions with every person she kills. And how do they kind of come into the middle? So yeah, that journey is just like, okay, let's see how this kind of pans out.
Yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite cool.
My hookup is a Netflix series, Alice in Borderland.
Okay. K-drama.
No, Japanese manga adaptation.
Oh.
Yeah, it's about these guys that get dropped into a dystopia, like empty version of Tokyo, and they need to play games to survive. You need to win the games to survive, and the games have different themes based on there's games they're based on like a deck of cards, and then so each suit is like a different type of game. So like I think clubs is physical, diamond is mental, heart is all of that kind of stuff. And then the higher the number, the more difficult it is, and like you have to try and get all the cards to be able to get out of the gaming land, but it's proving difficult. Will our hero survive? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Cool.
But yeah. Oh, actually, quickly, Moses.
Yeah.
a yes or no question. Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't have to elaborate in any way.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite child?
No.
Okay, so Moses has chosen to lie.
That's easy. That's yeah.
I don't. I have a child who's the most like me and who frustrates me the most. But I know that I have the most to learn personally from that child. And
Sounds
so
like
I
a favorite
almost
to me.
I see this child as like this child. I need to, in accepting this child for who this child is, I am learning to accept myself. There's that dynamic. So every child, I feel like every child presents a learning curve for me, a unique learning curve with their personalities, and I appreciate all of the learning curves.
Boy, I'm just saying right there. You're talking about one child in particular that sounds like a favorite.
The most challenge. I spoke about the most challenging child.
Yeah, and you like challenges, which means you like that child the most. Bam. There you go.
I mean, you could flip it like that. That's not the way I'd put it.
Jeez. Anyway, shout out Reed for the intro outro music. Calvin turned Audrey amazing logo. You can find us on X at the Furnace UK. Find us on Instagram at TBS Furnace.
I took a second.
I totally forgot. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I just like to. You can find us on Instagram at TBS Furnace. You can email us at tbsfurnace@gmail.com. You can find us at soundcloud.com/blackfurnace no apostrophe. On all good podcast websites and apps, so Black Furnace no apostrophe. And that's it. And we're on YouTube.
Come on.
And fit that in somewhere.
Shout out Nat for listening live and that.
Yeah.
Always appreciate that, bro.
Shout out.
But yeah, this is the Blacksmith's Furnace signing out.